Hi, I'm Sheree Foster and this is 3D HealthNet. About a year ago, I showed you my idea that I felt was inspired of how to cook beans. And after having many problems cooking beans where it sticks to the pan, runs out of water, never gets tender, all of those issues trying to cook beans, I came up with an idea. And some of you will remember, I just use quart jars. And this is just a normal water bath canner, but I'm not canning them, I'm just cooking them. I'm using the quart jars as a pot, so to speak. So I'm able to do 7 pots of whole foods simultaneously. I put 1 cup of beans in each jar, fill it to the top with water, let it soak overnight, and now they're ready to cook. So I have to dump that water out, but I don't want to waste it, so I'm going to just dump that water right back into the pot. Not into the jars, but into the pot below, because that's what I'm going to use to cook the beans with. Known to lose a bean or two through my fingers, but it's a lot easier than taking the time to put a strainer or something like that. And I'm always looking to skip steps or eliminate steps. It makes it faster. Now there's a middle spot here that I haven't filled, and I have rice and lentils that I'm going to use for my veggie burgers. Now the veggie burgers use rice and beans and then some other ingredients that's in the recipe in the cookbook. So you have to go look there to find that. But the nice thing about rice and beans is they both take about an hour each. And so the rest take 2.5. So I could stick this in the middle, cook that fully, take that out, put this in the middle, and cook that fully in the same amount of time that it takes to cook all of the other beans, because the other beans take so long. Now I'm going to need to fill these back up to the brim with water and bring them to a boil. Now, normally I would just leave these to boil for 2.5 hours, come back, and they're all tender, all ready to go. But today I'm going to try something different. I'm going to bring them to a boil on the stove and then put them in my new solar oven. I'm so excited. My husband got a solar oven for himself for Father's Day, and it was a great gift. I wish I had thought of it. So he has a solar oven, and now I'm going to try this. I'm going to bring it to a boil and then set it in the sun. Now some of you might remember that I mentioned before that when I took the pot out, it was already boiling, and then I wrapped it in sleeping bags. I put it in a bin, very large bin, put the lid on, put more sleeping bags, and made an insulated oven. And 2.5 hours later, I came back, and the lentils and rice were done to perfection, and the rest of the beans were not quite done. Now, I didn't have the confidence really to leave it in there to see if it would eventually cook. I went ahead and put it on the stove again, brought it to a boil, and then put it all wrapped up again. And that did it. By bringing it to a boil again, 5 minutes on the stove, put it back in the insulated oven, it cooked perfectly. Come back in an hour, they were all done. So it took a little bit longer than just having constant heat on it, but it eliminated the electricity or the need for electricity. So if you could bring it to a boil first, then wrap it up, that's one way to do it. Now, if this solar oven idea works, and the reason why I say if is because the glass door of the oven closes down and it's not deep enough for this pot. This pot is going to come out, and half of it's going to be above the solar oven. So without that glass holding the heat in, I don't know what it'll do, if it'll do the job. Now, it just so happens that I'm cooking this particular batch of beans for a special dinner that we're doing for the Relief Society, and I'm going to be demonstrating this idea of how to cook beans, and they get to taste it. So what I've done is I've got red, white, garbanzo, and black, and those four will be for that Mediterranean bean salad that I showed you before. Then we are going to have pizza with freshly ground whole wheat and top it with some tomato sauce from the garden, and everyone's going to bring what they have from their garden. And then we're going to put toppings from the garden such as onions and bell peppers and garlic. It's going to be so good. Then we have basil and oregano like we did with the sauce, and hopefully you've seen that video. Go check that out, where we made our own garden tomato sauce for pizza. And then we have 2 jars left over of black beans. Now those jars are going to be for dessert. We're going to make black bean brownies. Now they are so delicious. Now everyone always hears black bean brownies and their first reaction is, ew! But really, they are so good. And when you use the finest and best brownie mix, it makes anything taste good. But what the black beans do is they replace the egg and the oil and water if you had to add water. So right there, we don't have to store. If we were talking about food storage for long periods of time, we don't have to worry about the egg or the oil if we have beans. So you cook the beans, you mash them, and you add them to your brownie mix. And you have replaced the egg and the oil. And it's delicious. Now I'm going to fill them back up with water. We'll fill them back up to the rim. And now it doesn't have to be very full at the bottom, maybe about 3 inches of water, which we have down there, by just pouring the water that was in the jars. So now I'm going to put the lentils in the middle, put the lid on, the regular lid, and bring this to a boil. That'll just take a few minutes to boil. And my next step is to find a way to bring that to boil without using electricity. I'm looking forward to that. I think maybe I do have a portable propane stove, and so if I could use enough propane to bring all those pots to a boil, that would be great, and then put it in the solar oven. I'm also thinking of buying this other stove that I've seen that's kind of like a very large pipe with a hole in it, and you feed sticks and kindling into it, and it lights a fire in there, and then you set the pot on top. It's only about this big around though, so I don't know how balanced that would be to put a big giant heavy pot on top of something like that. But I will figure something out. Other than just a campfire, that could work too. So, but the bottom of that pot is very thin. It's not designed to sit in a fire. So I think I would have to put something under that first that's thicker, like maybe a pizza plate, those pizza oven plates that you put pizza on, that's made out of stone. That could work. So I'm still thinking about this, but the next step is to boil it without electricity. I'm going to experiment, and then I'll let you know. So let's go take a look at the solar oven and see if it's hot enough. It's been out there a couple hours, and it's a hot day, so I think it's going to be really hot by now.